financial crimes are more sophisticated than you might think. What if I told you there are entire networks dedicated to stealing millions, even billions, of dollars, often right under our noses? These aren't just isolated incidents or small-time criminals. These are highly organized, multi-layered syndicates working in the shadows of the global economy. They don't just make a quick buck, they wreak havoc on the financial systems of countries, businesses, and individuals alike. And they've been doing it for years, hiding in plain sight, blending into the fabric of our economy. They're not just criminals, they're part of a dangerous and highly organized underground economy. Welcome to the world of financial crime networks, a shadowy realm where the stakes are high, and the players are even higher. In the next hour, we'll take you deep inside this hidden world. You'll discover how these networks operate, the methods they use to carry out their schemes, and how they continue to thrive despite relentless efforts from law enforcement to shut them down. From money laundering operations that span continents, to elaborate Ponzi schemes that have ruined lives, to underground cybercrime syndicates, we'll reveal the shocking truths behind some of the most infamous financial crimes in history. These criminals aren't just sneaky, they're masters of deception, able to operate under the radar for years, sometimes even decades. You'll also learn about the chilling level of influence they have, and how they manage to escape the law despite the best efforts of investigators. Financial crime networks aren't just a relic of the past, or something you only hear about in movies. In fact, these criminal organizations are evolving at an alarming rate, becoming more complex and more sophisticated as they continue to exploit weaknesses in the global financial system. What started out as petty frauds or small-time scams has now grown into massive international operations that span across borders and industries, involving billions of dollars. And they are not slowing down anytime soon. From money laundering operations designed to clean billions in illicit money to Ponzi schemes that lure in unsuspecting victims and break their finances, financial crime networks have a dark, insidious grip on our economy. We often think of financial fraud as being something that only happens to the naive or the unsuspecting. But these networks don't just target individuals, they infiltrate entire industries, and, in some cases, even manipulate government policy and international markets for their own gain. Take a moment and think about how your money moves through the financial system. When you deposit money into a bank, invest in stocks, or even make purchases online, you trust that the system is secure, that everything is legitimate. But what if we told you that there are people, millions of dollars and criminals, working behind the scenes to take advantage of that trust? They exploit loopholes, bend the rules, and manipulate systems that were designed to protect you. The truth is, there's an entire underground world of financial crime, hidden away from the public eye, that is impacting your life in ways you might not even realize. Whether it's sophisticated cybercrime rings that steal millions by exploiting technology vulnerabilities, or international cartels that move money across borders to avoid detection, these criminal networks are deeply embedded in the global financial system. And, while law enforcement and governments have been working hard to dismantle them, their very nature makes it difficult to put a stop to them. These criminals use anonymity, complex networks, and cutting-edge technology to stay one step ahead, making them almost impossible to catch. But it's not just their methods that make them so dangerous. It's the fact that financial crime networks aren't some isolated, rogue individuals, they're vast, interconnected organizations with a reach that extends beyond borders and industries. Think of them like a spider's web, where each individual thread is connected to a much larger network of fraud, deception, and manipulation. Over the course of this video, we'll be diving into the structure of these networks, looking at their operations, and uncovering how they function. You'll hear real-life examples of how these networks have caused catastrophic damage, and how they continue to thrive despite their criminality. We'll also reveal the methods they use to cover their tracks and evade detection for so long. But here's the question that everyone wants to know: how do they get away with it? How do these financial crime networks operate under the radar for so long? What do they know that keeps them one step ahead of law enforcement, regulators, and the very systems that are meant to catch them? We'll break down the anatomy of these criminal organizations, how they operate in the shadows, and why the battle to catch them is more complex than we might think. It's a fight that's ongoing, and one where the stakes are higher than ever before. As we peel back the layers of financial crime, you'll start to see how deeply these operations are embedded in the system, and why it's not just an issue of bad actors, it's a problem with the system itself. These networks have found a way to profit off the weaknesses in our economic structure, leaving governments, businesses, and individuals vulnerable to massive losses. What's worse, some of the most notorious financial criminals are still out there, operating in the shadows. A financial crime network is far from a simple one-off crime or a lone actor. These are sophisticated groups or syndicates, carefully organized to carry out a wide range of illegal financial activities. Their operations range from insider trading to large-scale fraud, money laundering, identity theft, cybercrime, and even organized thefts targeting corporations or entire economies. The sheer scale of these criminal enterprises makes them a major threat to global financial systems, yet they are often hiding in plain sight. These networks are not just small, disorganized groups, these are well-oiled machines, many of which operate across borders and are backed by enormous resources. From money laundering operations involving hundreds of millions of dollars, to cybercriminal syndicates that steal sensitive data for blackmail or fraud, financial crime networks span across different sectors of the economy, impacting governments, corporations, and even regular citizens. But what makes them so dangerous is their ability to adapt, evolve, and stay hidden from law enforcement. They are able to exploit weaknesses in the financial system, manipulate markets, and fly under the radar for years, sometimes even decades. These networks thrive because they capitalize on one key thing: the interconnectedness of the global financial system. Money doesn't have borders anymore, and neither do these criminal operations. They take advantage of the anonymity of digital transactions, the complexity of global markets, and the often slow-moving bureaucratic systems that are supposed to oversee these activities. Financial crime networks are a perfect storm of greed, technological sophistication, and the exploitation of legal and political systems. While the actions of these networks may seem chaotic or disorganized from the outside, there's a method to the madness. Financial crime networks operate like any legitimate business, with their own hierarchy, leadership, and structure. They function with a clear organizational system. Just like a corporation, they have bosses, employees, contractors, and even subsidiaries. The goal of these groups is simple: to make money. But the means by which they do so are anything but simple. Take, for example, money laundering. This operation typically begins with the illicit acquisition of funds, either through fraud, embezzlement, or criminal enterprises. Once the money is in their hands, it must be cleaned before it can be used. To do this, the criminals will use various tactics, including shell companies, offshore bank accounts, and a series of fake transactions to make the dirty money appear legitimate. Often, they will funnel these funds through legal businesses, like casinos, real estate, or online marketplaces, to avoid detection by authorities. By the time the money is ready to be spent or invested, it looks as though it has come from a legitimate source. But it's not just about laundering money. These financial crime networks are also masters of deception and manipulation. Many use fake companies and shell corporations to hide illegal activities, obscure identities, and create paper trails that lead nowhere. They rely on encrypted communications, VPNs, and the dark web to avoid detection and to communicate covertly. Some even use legitimate financial tools and institutions to launder money, infiltrating businesses and industries in order to create a clean facade for their crimes. A key tactic used by these networks is the manipulation of markets. They use insider information, fake investments, and fraudulent financial instruments to artificially inflate the value of stocks, bonds, or other assets. By creating false demand or speculation, they are able to attract investment and cash out with huge profits, often at the expense of legitimate investors. In some cases, these fraudulent schemes have led to entire market crashes, devastating economies and leaving ordinary people to bear the brunt of the financial loss. What truly sets these financial crime networks apart from small-time criminals is the sheer scale at which they operate. Some of the most powerful and successful criminal organizations have an international presence, with fingers in nearly every pie: governments, financial institutions, and major corporations. Their reach extends far beyond local crime, infiltrating global markets and manipulating entire financial systems. These networks are constantly evolving, using new technology, new strategies, and new financial tools to outpace law enforcement. In fact, many of them are operating in plain sight, hiding in legitimate business activities, manipulating stock markets, or laundering money through industries that are difficult to regulate. They exploit global trade and financial systems, making it nearly impossible to track them back to their origin. The most dangerous thing about these criminal networks is that they have connections and leverage. They don't just act in isolation, they have powerful allies, including corrupt politicians, government officials, or even high-ranking executives within major corporations. These corrupt figures either facilitate their operations or turn a blind eye, ensuring that the network remains untouchable. The global nature of these operations means that even if one country tries to crack down on these networks, they can simply relocate or find other ways to operate in countries with looser regulations or less enforcement. One of the most notable examples of the scale of these operations can be seen in the context of large-scale money laundering operations, where billions of dollars are moved across international borders, often using legitimate financial institutions to cover their tracks. Some of these operations have gone undetected for decades, and when they are exposed, they reveal massive, coordinated efforts involving dozens of criminals, politicians, and business professionals. But the real question remains, who are the masterminds behind these criminal operations? How do they manage to stay hidden for so long? And how do they keep their operations going despite the best efforts of law enforcement? These networks operate in ways that seem impossible to detect, and while some criminals are caught, many continue to work in the shadows, with little fear of being brought to justice. As we dig deeper into these organizations, you'll learn about the power players behind them, the people who pull the strings from behind the scenes. From skilled hackers and cybercriminals to corrupt politicians and corporate insiders, these networks rely on a web of deceit and manipulation to keep their operations running smoothly. The deeper we go, the more you'll realize just how much power these criminals wield and how they continue to evade detection, even in a world where information is so readily available. Every financial crime network begins with leadership. At the top, there are usually one or two masterminds, individuals with the foresight, power, and ruthlessness to control the entire operation. These leaders are often highly skilled in finance, economics, and law, able to understand the complex mechanisms of financial systems. But they are also highly manipulative and able to recruit individuals with the right expertise to carry out their schemes. Most financial crime networks start small, with a few key players who know how to manipulate the financial systems. These players are often professionals, accountants, former bankers, lawyers, or even former government officials. What they bring to the table is a combination of technical skills and insider knowledge. They know how the system works, which loopholes to exploit, and how to stay just one step ahead of the authorities. As these leaders attract more talented individuals to their cause, the network grows, and its operations expand. What was once a small, localized operation quickly morphs into an international network of professionals, each with their own specialty. Some are responsible for laundering money, others for hacking financial systems, and others for creating fake companies and documents to cover their tracks. The complexity of the operation increases as the leaders gather more resources, making it harder for law enforcement to track or infiltrate their systems. These leaders often have a clear vision: make as much money as possible, as quickly as possible, and hide their tracks so thoroughly that they never face justice. But at the core of their operations, the basic principles are simple: use legal structures to disguise illegal activities, exploit global financial systems, and stay anonymous at all costs. The most critical task for a financial crime network is to move money. Not just move it, but move it in such a way that no one can trace its origins, ownership, or final destination. These networks operate in the shadows, taking advantage of complex financial instruments and systems to make money disappear and reappear in ways that leave no trace. One of the primary methods used by these criminal organizations is creating fake invoices and phony transactions. This allows them to route funds through legitimate businesses or fake companies. For example, a network might set up an offshore company, pretending to provide a legitimate service or product. They then use this company to bill other companies in the network for services rendered, even though no services are ever actually provided. The money flows from one account to another, passing through multiple layers of shell companies, making it nearly impossible to trace. Another method of moving illicit funds is through cryptocurrency exchanges. Cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum are decentralized, meaning they are not tied to any government or financial institution. This makes them ideal for criminals who need to move money across borders without being detected. Criminal networks use cryptocurrency to hide their transactions, taking advantage of the anonymity these digital currencies provide. The money is often washed through multiple wallets, exchanged for different coins, and finally converted back into traditional currency, all while maintaining complete anonymity. Some networks also make use of black market currencies, forms of money that exist outside the legal financial system. These currencies are often exchanged through underground networks and are used to bypass financial regulations. For example, a network might trade in gold or even physical cash, sending it through multiple locations before bringing it back into the financial system, again with no trace of its original source. Perhaps the most sophisticated method of moving money, however, is through international banks and financial institutions. Many of these organizations, especially in countries with lax financial regulations, provide a safe haven for illicit funds. By using a network of cooperative banks around the world, criminal organizations can move money across multiple jurisdictions, each with its own set of laws and regulatory bodies. This makes it incredibly difficult for authorities to track the movement of illicit funds, especially when the financial institutions involved are either unaware or complicit in the operation. One of the most infamous examples of a financial crime network is the Russian money laundering operation, which siphoned billions of dollars through a complex web of international transactions. This network used a series of shell companies, fake invoices, and fake business deals to launder money across multiple continents. The operation, which spanned over several years, involved multiple banks, including some of the most respected institutions in the world. These criminal groups used a variety of sophisticated techniques to hide their tracks. For instance, they set up a network of dummy companies in low-regulation jurisdictions, often in countries with weak anti-money laundering laws. These companies would send money to other fake businesses, covering up the trail and moving the money through international borders. The funds would then be funneled through financial institutions in countries like the United Kingdom, Switzerland, and the Cayman Islands, where regulations were lax enough to allow such operations to thrive. The scale of this operation was mind-blowing. At one point, it was revealed that billions of dollars had been funneled through these channels, with much of the money flowing directly to the Russian government or affiliated entities. The funds were used to finance everything from political campaigns to military operations, effectively reinforcing the power of those running the criminal network. It wasn't until investigative journalists and law enforcement officials began digging deeper into the financial system that the operation was exposed. After years of investigation, they pieced together the layers of fake companies, forged documents, and fake transactions, eventually linking the network to some of the most powerful individuals in the financial world. The fallout was massive, with billions of dollars in illicit funds being seized, and a number of high-ranking officials being arrested or forced into hiding. The scariest part of this story? The criminals behind the operation had learned from each failed attempt. They knew how to manipulate the system, how to disguise their operations, and how to keep moving money across borders undetected. As law enforcement and regulatory bodies grew more sophisticated, these criminals adapted, always staying one step ahead. And that's the reality of financial crime networks. They are constantly evolving, adapting, and finding new ways to evade justice. The latest methods include cryptocurrency laundering using decentralized exchanges, AI-powered fraud detection avoidance, and other sophisticated tools that allow criminals to stay ahead of the authorities. These tactics make it harder than ever to track illicit activities, and the fact that law enforcement is always playing catch-up only adds to the danger. These networks are playing a game of cat and mouse, and with billions of dollars at stake, there is no end in sight. What's even more chilling is that as new technology emerges, so do new opportunities for financial criminals to exploit vulnerabilities. Will we ever be able to fully stop them, or are we facing an endless cycle of criminal innovation and financial devastation? Financial crime networks don't just harm individual victims, they have a significant and far-reaching impact on the global economy. The effects of these crimes extend well beyond the immediate losses suffered by businesses and individuals involved. They reduce the flow of capital into legitimate businesses, stifle economic growth, and increase the burden on taxpayers as governments must step in to fill the void. Stolen money, whether through fraud or money laundering, doesn't just disappear. It moves through the financial system, often bouncing through various countries, banks, and illicit exchanges before it's completely hidden. As it moves through the system, it creates disruptions in legitimate markets. The funds that could have been used for productive purposes, such as business expansion, healthcare, infrastructure, or innovation, are instead diverted into criminal operations. Consider this: when money is laundered, it is essentially robbed from the legitimate economy. Money that could have been invested into jobs, technological innovation, and infrastructure is instead siphoned off by criminals. Fraudulent schemes like Ponzi schemes or financial scams deprive businesses of much-needed capital. They kill trust in financial markets, making it harder for legitimate businesses to raise funds or attract investors. In short, financial crime networks prevent the proper functioning of the global economy. By diverting money away from productive investments and distorting markets, these crimes leave behind an economic wasteland that impacts both the victims and the broader society. But the economic damage isn't confined to banks or corporations. The ripple effect spreads far and wide, affecting entire communities, nations, and economies. When businesses are defrauded, it's not just the company that suffers, the workers, suppliers, and customers feel the pain too. Employees lose their jobs when businesses close due to financial fraud or when funds are drained through money laundering. Small businesses that rely on larger companies for supply chains and contracts often find themselves cut off when the larger business is caught in a fraud scandal or goes bankrupt as a result of criminal activity. Take, for example, the fallout from the 2008 financial crisis. While not a single fraud or crime in isolation, the collapse of the housing bubble and widespread mortgage fraud, combined with the greed and corruption on Wall Street, led to massive layoffs, loss of homes, and an overall economic recession. Millions of families lost their homes and jobs, businesses went bankrupt, and countries worldwide faced severe economic downturns. Even years after the crisis, economies are still trying to recover, and the impact of financial crimes continues to be felt today. In fact, the ripple effect of financial crime networks extends into every corner of society. From small businesses to large corporations, from the unemployed to the government, no one is immune. The worst part? The people at the top, the executives and masterminds, often walk away unscathed, while everyone else suffers the consequences. One of the most infamous financial crime cases in history is the story of Bernie Madoff, whose Ponzi scheme defrauded investors of billions of dollars. Madoff, once a respected financier, was running the largest Ponzi scheme in history, which lasted for decades. Madoff's fraud started small, with a promise of consistent, high returns. But as his operation grew, so did the web of lies and deception. For decades, Madoff convinced wealthy individuals, celebrities, institutions, and even charities to invest their money. They trusted him because he had a reputation for success, and he had built relationships with the elite of the financial world. Little did they know that their investments weren't being used to generate returns. Instead, Madoff was simply paying returns to earlier investors with the new money coming in. How did Madoff manage to pull this off for so long? He had a combination of factors working in his favor. First, he was a highly respected figure in the financial world, which gave him the credibility to attract big investors. Second, he used his vast network of contacts and his reputation to keep anyone from questioning his activities. He was well connected in the world of finance, and he knew how to manipulate the system. Lastly, his firm's paperwork and financial statements looked legitimate. He even had auditors who were complicit in the scheme. Eventually, Madoff's scheme began to unravel during the 2008 financial crisis. When markets took a downturn, many of his investors tried to cash out, but Madoff was unable to pay them. It was then that the true scale of his fraud became apparent. It turned out that Madoff had stolen an estimated $65 billion, though only a fraction of that was actual losses. The rest was just fabricated returns. Thousands of investors were left with nothing. Retirees lost their life savings, and charitable organizations saw their funds wiped out. Madoff's actions not only ruined the lives of individual investors but also caused major damage to the financial industry's reputation. The scandal shook Wall Street and the world of finance, and many of Madoff's associates, including his sons, were left in the aftermath of the fallout. The impact of Madoff's Ponzi scheme is still being felt. Many of the victims of the scheme are still fighting to recover their losses, and the event led to significant changes in regulations governing financial markets. But the question remains, how did this fraud go undetected for so long, and how many other similar schemes are still operating in the shadows? What's even more chilling about financial crime networks like Madoff's is that these operations aren't isolated incidents, they're a recurring pattern. The methods used by Madoff to deceive investors are being used by countless other criminals today. The fear is that Madoff is just one example in a sea of similar schemes that continue to thrive under the radar. What made Madoff's scheme so dangerous wasn't just the scale or the impact on investors, it was the system he exploited. The world of finance is built on trust, but what happens when that trust is abused by someone with the knowledge and skills to manipulate the system? Madoff's scheme exposed deep vulnerabilities in how financial markets are regulated and how individuals can slip through the cracks, undetected for years. But Madoff wasn't the first person to exploit financial systems, and he won't be the last. These networks are constantly evolving, and as technology advances, so do their methods. Whether it's new ways to launder money or more sophisticated Ponzi schemes, financial crime networks are growing stronger and harder to catch. And the most terrifying part? They know how to stay hidden, using increasingly complex tactics to stay out of sight. Financial crime networks are ever evolving, and the crimes they commit range from money laundering to large-scale fraud, cybercrime, and beyond. As these networks become more sophisticated, so too must the agencies tasked with taking them down. Law enforcement around the world, including the FBI, Interpol, and the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, work tirelessly to combat these criminal organizations, dismantling their operations and bringing the individuals responsible to justice. These agencies collaborate internationally, recognizing that financial crime doesn't stop at borders. Whether it's tracking stolen funds across countries or shutting down international Ponzi schemes, law enforcement understands that to effectively combat financial crime, they must work across jurisdictions. Their goal is not only to arrest the perpetrators but also to disrupt the networks that allow these crimes to flourish. But what makes this battle so difficult? Financial crime networks are extremely well-funded and highly organized. They possess the resources to hide their tracks, using encrypted communications, shell companies, and legal loopholes to cover their operations. Financial crime syndicates are built to last, operating in the shadows, so every victory against them is hard-won. The complexity of financial crimes, paired with the often multinational scope of the networks, makes it challenging for authorities to keep up. To understand the scale of the challenge law enforcement faces, let's dive into how these financial crime networks operate. The key to their success lies in their ability to remain hidden. These networks have learned to exploit weaknesses in the global financial system and stay one step ahead of authorities. One of the most effective tools at their disposal is encrypted communications. Whether it's using encrypted email services or private messaging platforms, these criminals can organize their operations and plan their illicit activities without fear of being intercepted by authorities. This technological sophistication allows them to operate with near-total anonymity, making it incredibly difficult for law enforcement to gather evidence. Another challenge is the use of shell companies. These are businesses set up in foreign countries that serve as a front for illegal activities. Shell companies allow financial crime networks to move illicit funds across borders without raising suspicion. These companies can be registered in countries with loose regulations, making it nearly impossible for law enforcement to trace where the money goes once it leaves the bank. In addition, financial crime networks often rely on international cooperation. They have partners all over the globe, ensuring that their operations continue even when one part of the network is exposed. This international nature makes it harder for authorities to take down the entire operation since different countries have different laws and regulations governing financial crimes. Finally, the sheer scale of these networks complicates enforcement. The vast sums of money involved, along with the intricate layers of transactions, mean that authorities must sift through mountains of financial data to find clues. This process is time-consuming, resource-intensive, and often only yields partial results. Even if one part of the network is taken down, another section may continue operating undetected. Despite these challenges, law enforcement has had some notable successes in recent years. One of the most significant busts was the takedown of Alphabi, one of the largest and most notorious dark net marketplaces in history. Alphabi, which operated on the dark web, was a hub for illicit activity, including the sale of drugs, stolen data, weapons, and hacking tools. It became one of the largest platforms for online crime, with over 200,000 users engaged in illegal transactions. But in 2017, law enforcement agencies, led by the FBI and Interpol, managed to infiltrate the site, collect evidence, and shut it down. This was a huge victory in the battle against dark web crime. The takedown of Alphabi led to the arrest of hundreds of individuals involved in criminal activities. Authorities also seized millions of dollars worth of illicit goods, including illegal drugs and weapons. The success of this operation showed that even the most hidden networks could be infiltrated and dismantled by dedicated law enforcement efforts. But even with such significant victories, these efforts are only a part of a larger, ongoing struggle. As one network is taken down, others quickly rise to take its place. The criminals behind these operations are often quick to adapt, moving to different platforms or using new methods to stay one step ahead of the authorities. Despite law enforcement's growing expertise and a number of high-profile takedowns, the war against financial crime networks continues. Every time one network is brought down, new ones emerge, often more sophisticated and harder to detect. Just when it seems like authorities are gaining ground, a new wave of financial crime networks emerges, leveraging the latest technology and finding new loopholes in the system. The rise of cryptocurrencies, for example, has given these criminals new ways to move money without being traced. As the global economy becomes more interconnected and technology continues to evolve, financial crime networks find fresh opportunities to exploit vulnerabilities. But the question remains, how long can law enforcement keep up with these evolving threats? Can they continue to dismantle these operations, or will the criminals always find new ways to hide in the shadows? The fight against financial crime is far from over, and it's a battle that law enforcement must continue to fight on the front lines. The dark world of financial crime networks is not going away anytime soon. As technology evolves, so too do the tools and tactics these criminals use to hide their tracks. The rise of cryptocurrency, encrypted communications, and new forms of cybercrime means that financial crime networks can operate with greater sophistication and evade detection more effectively than ever before. The future of these networks could be even darker than it is today. As we've seen, these criminals are often one step ahead of law enforcement, using new technologies to mask their activities and stay undetected. The ability to move money quickly across borders, hide behind layers of fake companies, and exploit legal loopholes makes these networks incredibly resilient and difficult to shut down. With the rise of the dark web and other hidden digital platforms, these groups have an ever-expanding playground where they can operate freely, making it harder for authorities to track their movements. Financial crime networks are also becoming more interconnected, with cross-border collaborations making it even more difficult to dismantle these organizations. Criminal syndicates may operate across multiple countries, taking advantage of different legal systems, weak regulations, and corrupt officials to further their agendas. The more globalized the economy becomes, the more opportunities these networks have to exploit vulnerabilities in financial systems. The technology that enables financial crimes is advancing at a rapid pace, and this creates a perfect storm for criminals to exploit. The anonymity provided by cryptocurrencies and decentralized networks only makes it more challenging for authorities to trace illicit transactions, while the growing use of artificial intelligence and machine learning could potentially help criminals bypass the methods law enforcement uses to catch them. But while these networks are increasingly sophisticated, that doesn't mean we're powerless. As individuals, we must remain vigilant and stay informed about how these crimes work and the signs of fraud. It starts with being aware of common tactics used by financial criminals, such as fake investments, phishing schemes, and fraudulent financial services. We must also make it harder for these networks to thrive. Reporting suspicious activities, especially when it comes to financial transactions, is a crucial step in protecting our financial systems from exploitation. The more we educate ourselves and stay alert to the risks, the harder it becomes for these criminals to operate unnoticed. Law enforcement agencies and regulators are continuously working to stay ahead of these criminals, but they need our help. Being proactive, reporting suspicious behavior, and ensuring that we protect our own personal financial data is part of the collective effort to dismantle these dangerous networks. It's also essential to support legislation that strengthens the financial system and holds corporations, governments, and individuals accountable. Fighting financial crime isn't just about catching the bad guys, it's about creating a financial ecosystem that is transparent, secure, and resistant to fraud. Ultimately, the fight against financial crime networks is one that requires all of us to take part in. We have a role to play in defending the integrity of our financial systems and ensuring that the actions of a few criminals don't jeopardize the economic stability of millions of innocent people. If this video opened your eyes to the hidden world of financial crime, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you don't miss our future deep dives into the world of crime, fraud, and corruption. Together, we can work to raise awareness and stop the spread of these dangerous criminal networks. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and always be on the lookout for signs of financial fraud.